Here's a map of the part that we're interested in, a small part of a very big country, and I guess we're going to get fairly familiar with this map in the weeks to come. The military logic of it is pretty clear. The Russians would like to draw effectively a military line pushing south from Kharkiv to meet up, going north from Mariupol, to produce a sort of straight line between Kharkiv and Mariupol and isolate that salient which is to the east of that line. And we've marked on the map here all the places where intensive fighting has been recorded over the last 24 hours. So there's been intensive fighting in Chuhiv, in Izium, in Severodonetsk, in Popasna and in Marinka. And those are all of the areas where the Ukrainians are trying to hold the Russian advance. Because what the Russians want to do, draw this north-south line and then push from the areas they already hold from the east towards the west to meet up with that line. Now, that sounds pretty logical if you say it quickly. However, there are some caveats to all of that, and it's never as simple as it always sounds. First of all, the distances are pretty big, 300 miles from north to south, so there's a lot of offensive to conduct here. Secondly, I think the Russians have got off to a rolling start. It doesn't seem to me as if they've got off to what you would normally expect as a sort of hammer blow start, get everything in place and then really go. I think probably, I'm guessing, under pressure from the Kremlin, they've got off to a rolling start because they're under pressure to produce something pretty quickly. And that's why the Ukrainians have been quite successful, certainly over the last day and a half, at holding these Russian pushes east to west in the way that they have. Second problem is that the Russians are being counterattacked. The Ukrainians are not just holding them so far, but they're counterattacking, particularly around southeast of Kharkiv, between Kharkiv and Chuhiv, and north of Kharkiv. There's a direct line, you can't see it on this map, between Kharkiv and Belgorod in Russia, which is where most of the supplies are coming from. And the Ukrainians are attacking those communication lines to try to prevent material getting through. And then finally, of course, there is Mariupol in the south. In truth, the Russians have Mariupol. They control it. They control the whole city. But there at the Avastal steelworks, there seem to be 1,000, 1,500 members of the Ukrainian armed forces who will not surrender. They seem to be in the tunnels and the bomb shelters and the caverns underneath the steelworks, which are pretty considerable. And so those elements of the Azov Brigade, the 56th Mechanized Infantry, the 10th Assault Brigade, however many of them are left, are under there. And they seem to have decided that nothing remains but to fight. And there is a military logic to that, because as long as they refuse to surrender, although their fate is now fixed, as long as they refuse to surrender, they are tying up Russian troops who otherwise would be going north to try to build this line between Mariupol and Kharkiv. So there is a military logic, but of course there is also a political and moral logic to all of this, because they are now the epitome. They are iconic of the sort of conflict that this has become, this David and Goliath struggle. So in saying what they say, it really matters to Kiev and probably to the rest of the world that nothing remains but to fight.